Hello and welcome to the Republican Rundown. My name is Tommy Pigott. We'll be joined shortly with Anna Kelly and Matt Middleton to talk about the border. But given Biden's trip to the border, we wanted to break down a bit about how we got here, because Biden is intent on rewriting history when it comes to the border crisis that he created. Now, in Biden's first 100 days, he took 94 executive actions which created this crisis. He could undo those executive actions anytime that he wants, but so far, he is refusing. Now, when he signed these executive actions, the beginning of this crisis started almost immediately. Here's a flashback to April 2021 when Biden was confronted about the border crisis.
But in April alone, Mr. President, 170,000 people, migrants, apprehended at the border. It's a 20-year record. There are 22,000 unaccompanied children in our country right now. That's a record. That sounds to most folks like a crisis.
Well, look, it's way down now. We've now gotten control.
We've now gotten control. That's what Biden said almost 3 years ago. Since then, approximately 9 million illegal border crossings have occurred, including 1.8 million gotaways. Those are illegal immigrants that have escaped into the country and not apprehended by law enforcement. We've seen a growing humanitarian crisis where as many as 85,000 unaccompanied minors have been lost in the United States. The government has no idea where they are. That is the opposite of control. And yet Biden still insisted on lying. You'll remember back to one of the excuses they gave about the uptick in illegal border crossings was that it was seasonal. Here's Biden talking about that now.
It happens every single solitary year. There is a significant increase in the number of people coming to the border in the winter months of January, February, March. It happens every year.
That was a lie then, and it's a lie now. Before Joe Biden took office, the average monthly encounters were below 50,000 per month in the 8 years before Biden took office. Since Biden has taken office, the average monthly encounters are over 200,000. That's a massive uptick directly related to Joe Biden's policies, and he wanted to blame the weather. He said everything was under control. After this, for years, the Biden administration has insisted that their plan was working, that their plan was humane, when in reality, it was cruel. In recent months, as the extremely large scale of this border crisis has become clearer and clearer and clearer, the Biden administration has realized that they can't justify the lies they've been telling for years. So instead, they're trying to rewrite that history. They claim there's nothing we can do to solve this crisis. It's completely out of their control. Here's Biden talking about that a few weeks ago.
With executive authority, is there more you could do?
Not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work for us.
In reality, he could undo those executive actions, those 94 executive actions he took in those first 100 days, any day that he wants to. That's in his power right now. But he refuses to, and each day he refuses to reverse those executive actions is another day he is purposefully allowing this border crisis to continue. And he talks about Congress. House Republicans have passed H.R. 2, the strongest border security package in the history of Congress. For Biden to go out there and claim that Congress hasn't acted is an insult. In reality, he could tell Senate Democrats to stop blocking H.R. 2. It was passed close to 300 days ago. They could pass it today and end this crisis. There are so many ways that Joe Biden can end this crisis. He has the power to do so. He could pass that legislation, but he's refusing to. He is purposefully allowing this border crisis to continue. And the problem is, as they're trying to rewrite history, is that their message makes no sense. So you remember back when Biden called the border crisis seasonal? As recently as last month, Karine Jean-Pierre was repeating a very similar argument when it comes to illegal border crossings, saying that it ebbs and flows. We have that clip here too.
A couple weeks ago, you had said what we're seeing at the border isn't unusual, but in the month of December, there were more than 302,000 migrant encounters, the highest total for a single month ever reported. So does the administration concede that what we're seeing now is unusual?
What I said was, to be exact, is that what we're seeing at the U.S. is ebbs and flows in how many migrants arrive at the border. It's something that happens every year. It ebbs and flows. And it's fueled by efforts of smugglers to encourage irregular migration. And I will add, since May 12th, DHS has removed folks who have been here illegally, who were not here on a legal basis, about 460,000 people that they've been able to remove. That's what I said. Every year we see an ebbs and flow, and that's what we're seeing at this time, and which is caused by misinformation and disinformation from smugglers.
So it ebbs and flows. That's the exact same argument they were making 3 years ago when this border crisis first started. It was a lie then, it's a lie now. There is one thing she said that got at the truth, is that smugglers are taking advantage of this border crisis. The smuggling industry, if that's even the word for it, these heinous criminals, has grown to billions of dollars as they are exploiting Biden's border crisis to bring criminals across the border, to bring drugs across the border, and we're feeling the impacts in every single community across the country. The bottom line is this. Joe Biden has been lying about the border crisis since the day he took office, even beforehand, by promising to enact these open border policies. He created this crisis. He could reverse this crisis at any time if he chooses to, and so far he has refused. That's how we got to where we are. This crisis is a crisis of Joe Biden's creation. It's a crisis that Democrats have defended Joe Biden, have backed him in creating. It's a crisis that is unsustainable, and the only way to end it is by electing Republicans. Now, this is only a small sample of the lies that Biden's told. The team at RNC Research has put together a full compilation of the full evolution of Biden's border lies.
It happens every single solitary year. There is a significant increase in the number of people coming to the border in the winter months of January, February, March. It happens every year.
That's a record. That sounds to most folks like a crisis.
Well, look, it's way down now. We've now gotten control.
We're making progress, but it's not going to evidence itself overnight. It will not.
Where's the vice president on any of this? Isn't she supposed to be addressing the root causes of migration?
Absolutely, and she has been addressing the root causes of migration. We've actually seen some reductions in some of those numbers.
Do you have plans to visit the southern border?
I've been there before, and I haven't. I mean, I know it well. I guess I should go down, but the whole point of it is I haven't had a whole hell of a lot of time to get down. You notice you're not seeing a lot of pictures of kids lying on top of one another with looks like tarps on top of them.
Here's the way I see it. We've got to deal with the root causes in addition to what are the effects, right? Now, my focus has been on the root causes.
We are certainly focused on continuing to assert order at the border.
Yet we have effectively managed an unprecedented number of non-citizens seeking to enter the United States.
I think that we are doing a good job.
2 million people cross this border for the first time ever. You're confident this border is secure?
We have a secure border in that is a priority for any nation, including ours and our administration.
What is that solution? Can you understand the frustration, though, that Americans have about the situation at the border?
It's not a monolith. There are a variety of components to this.
Do you continue to maintain that the border is secure?
Yes, and we are working day in and day out to enhance its security, Congressman.
It's the border, because there's a more important thing going on.
We're executing a comprehensive strategy to secure our borders and build a safe, orderly, and humane immigration system.
As we advance our efforts to address the root causes of migration, our administration is simultaneously working to ensure a safe, orderly, and humane processing system at the border.
By that definition, no administration has ever had operational control. The way I define it is maximizing the resources that we have to deliver the most effective results, and we are indeed doing that. It is my testimony that the border is secure.
Things are going at the border, sir.
Much better than you all expected.
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
I think. Pardon me?
Do you have any plans to visit the border?
Not in the near term, no.
Our approach to managing the borders securely and humanely, even within our fundamentally broken immigration system, is working.
We have seen his border plan management be effective, and so we have taken actions. But again, this happens, it ebbs and flows. That's what we see at the border for different trends, for different reasons. And what we're seeing here at the border, the migration flow, increased migration flow, certainly it ebbs and flows. And we're at a time of the year where we're seeing more at the border, and it's not unusual.
I've done all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work rationally.
What we're seeing at the U.S. is ebbs and flows in how many migrants arrive at the border. It's something that happens every year. It ebbs and flows.
For much too long, as you all know, the immigration system has been broken. And it's long past time to fix it. We need help. Why won't they give me the help all this time? And now they're talking about the border. It's out of control.
Welcome back to the Republican Rundown. I'm here with Anna Kelly and Matt Middleton. So when we're looking at the border crisis, Biden's obviously heading down to the border. Democrats have spent years denying that this crisis exists. You have Democrats like Katie Porter that are insisting that examples of crime are isolated. When you hear Democrats trying to downplay the border crisis and the crime that we're seeing, what is your reaction to that?
Well, first of all, of course, it's wrong. I mean, we're seeing these horrific incidents of crime all across the country in states like Georgia, which isn't a border state. The horrific, brutal murder of 22-year-old Laken Riley, who was a student at University of Georgia, of course, had her whole life ahead of her. And she did everything right. I mean, she was running on campus. She told her friends where she was going. She had her phone on her, but unfortunately was brutally kidnapped and attacked and murdered by this illegal immigrant from Venezuela who had previously been detained by ICE. But because Athens, Georgia and New York City, where he was also arrested, are sanctuary cities, he was unfortunately let go because they do not comply with ICE detainers. So I think as a woman, especially, I think it's incredibly concerning about the fact that we aren't holding these illegal immigrants who come here commit crimes accountable. And it really lends itself to the fact that Biden continues to prioritize illegal immigrants who commit crimes, prioritize criminals in general over everyday Americans who just want to feel safe.
Yeah, I think the fact that you had this person who was arrested, this illegal immigrant who shouldn't have been in the country in the first place, and then he was arrested in New York. There were so many ways that Democrat policies, to be frank, because that's what they are, have failed to protect Americans when it comes to the crime we're seeing related to illegal immigration.
Since Biden came into office, they've set out in multiple ways to make sure that our border is porous, to make sure that our Border Patrol doesn't have the capabilities to make sure that the border is safe. I mean, just look at the fentanyl that's been able to come across our border, in the past 4 years, really. And between 2021 and 2020, there's been a 24% increase nationally in overdose deaths. And I mean, we can go through state by state. I mean, Georgia, for instance, has seen drug overdose deaths related to fentanyl increase by 124%. In Wisconsin, that number is 97%. In Arizona, 43.8%. And these are just statistics. I mean, the scope of the crisis is just, it's tough. It's unimaginable.
Yeah, and when you look at the amount of fentanyl that's coming through, it's also absurd to me that they are claiming success on fentanyl specifically. Biden's gone out and looked at the number of seizures that they've made of fentanyl. Matt, I saw in a recent research piece that you and your team put out, though, that they are only catching about 5 to 10% of the fentanyl that is coming through the border, or at least that's the best estimate. And you're seeing a record amount of seizures, which to me would then indicate that a record amount is getting through and poisoning American communities.
Yeah. Well, and we look at the similar statistics with the gotaways, right? So we talk about broadly that there are 9 million illegal immigrants that have been encountered attempting to cross the border. Part of that statistics includes the 1.2 million gotaways, or 1.8 million, I believe, that just were not able to be caught, right? Not able to be vetted, not able to be put through a process where maybe there is a waiting period to determine whether or not they could be eligible for citizenship, right? And so along with the fentanyl and the drugs and everything else that's crossing the border, another statistic that I think is worth highlighting is that since Biden came into office, 340 terrorists, people that are on FBI terrorist watch lists, have been allowed to cross the border as well. And those are people, again, that we encounter, right? But to your point, it's how much of that number is being not caught, not captured. And I think that's a scary statistic as well.
And I think if you look at the other examples of violent crimes that are happening, So many levels of this failing at the Democrat policies failing the American people.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I mean, it's a failure every step of the way because, like we talk about, it's an open border, so you have these folks getting in. And then once they get in, they commit crimes, again, like the Laken Riley case. I mean, the guy committed a crime against I want to say a toddler in New York City, but because New York is a sanctuary city, I mean, he was essentially just released back into the community, found his way to Athens, Georgia, and committed this terrible crime. I mean, that's just one piece of the puzzle. And then you have these liberal DAs across the country endorsed by Democrats who continue to promote things like cashless bail to let criminals back on the streets. You have, again, these sanctuary cities. So, I mean, it's absolutely a horrific puzzle of all of these combined soft on crime policies that ultimately just end up prioritizing criminals over everyday Americans.
Yeah, and I think it's also an important question to ask Democrats like Katie Porter, who are insisting that these are just isolated examples when they're not, and we have the fentanyl example, but how much death and destruction needs to happen before they actually call on Biden to reverse his executive actions? How much is too much for them? Any murder should be too much. Any fentanyl overdose should be too much. But why do Democrats keep on insisting on denying or keep on insisting on obstructing solutions to this border crisis?
Yeah, I mean, they keep covering for Joe Biden across the board, right? It's the same reason why they cover for his cognitive decline, even though we can all see it. It's the same reason they cover for not just the illegal immigration crisis, but the overall crime crisis, the economic crisis. I mean, they continue to lie and gaslight the American people when they see these things with their own eyes. So really, it's a shame because the American people deserve to have honest representatives who tell them the truth about what's happening and actually present real solutions about how to fix these problems. But instead we have people just kind of running cover for Joe Biden to try and get him reelected, and it's a shame.
And Matt, I think one of the things that you're also pointing out when you talk about the fentanyl crisis is that it's not just the border states. It's not just Texas, Arizona, California, even though the crisis there is astronomical. Thankfully, we have governors like Governor Greg Abbott that are taking steps to secure the border. But it is every state in this country that is now a border state because of Joe Biden.
Yeah, I think the brutal irony that kind of goes untalked about in all of this is when our climate border czar, or Kamala Harris, came out and said that we wanted to address the root causes of this immigration crisis. And that was a few years ago now. It's become apparent that the new root causes are this administration's border policies, right? The open border agenda that Biden sought out for when he became president has utterly failed. And I think if Katie Porter wants to look at changing policies, right, like they set out on this agenda on purpose. Biden set out with 94 executive orders in the first 100 days to undo a majority of the Trump administration's agenda to, one, create a border wall, two, have a thorough vetting process of people with remain in Mexico to make sure that folks are being vetted before they come into the states. And three, just working with our counterparts in the Northern Triangle, working with Mexico to make sure that cartels aren't able to send the drugs across the border. So to me, the irony of them just now saying that, you know, the crisis is now something they're able to address through, or only able to address through legislative fixes, to me, it's just unacceptable.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of a two-part thing here. We're talking about the 94 executive actions that Biden could reverse on any time he wanted. And if they insisted on legislation, there is legislation that passed the House. H.R. 2 passed the House. The Secure the Border Act passed the House 300 days ago. If they wanted to solve this crisis, they could either pressure Joe Biden, as he should, reverse those executive actions, or they could pass H.R. 2, and they refuse to do either. So I think, I mean, if they're talking about solutions, not only did Democrats create this crisis, it seems to me that they're also doubling down on those same policies that created the crisis. They're not reversing course at all.
Again, this is what Joe Biden promised to do in 2020. I mean, back in 2020, he called for ending the detention of illegal immigrants across the board. He called for decriminalizing illegal crossings. He called for suspending deportations of illegal immigrants in his first 100 days and longer. So, I mean, it's really confusing to follow because you had these promises that, I mean, I guess in some ways you could say he delivered on because he did deliver on that open border. But now that he's realizing the fact that it's a liability in an election year, he's totally trying to gaslight the American people. He's assuming that they don't remember that this is what he campaigned on in 2020. And it's insulting to the voters and to the American people who are watching this happen in real time.
Yeah, and I think the confusion that the Biden administration has when they're trying to rewrite history because they are to blame for this crisis is really evident when it comes to Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre, who is really repeating a lot of the same lies that Biden told from the beginning. If you remember back in the beginning of his administration, they're claiming this crisis was seasonal. Now Karine Jean-Pierre is saying that border crossings ebb and flow, and that's why we're seeing this uptick.
A couple weeks ago, you had said what we're seeing at the border isn't unusual, but in the month of December, there were more than 302,000 migrant encounters, the highest total for a single month ever recorded. So does the administration concede that what we're seeing now is unusual?
What I said was, to be exact, is that what we're seeing at the U.S. is ebbs and flows in how many migrants arrive at the border. It's something that happens every year. It ebbs and flows. And it's fueled by efforts of smugglers to encourage irregular migration. And I will add, since May 12th, DHS has removed folks who have been here illegally, who were not here on a legal basis, about 460,000 people that they've been able to remove. That's what I said. Every year we see an ebbs and flow, and that's what we're seeing at this time, and which is caused by misinformation and disinformation from smugglers.
So it ebbs and flows, which I think, again, is important to recognize. That wasn't from 3 years ago. That was from a month ago, when we've seen the worst border crisis sustained for 3 years. And then, Anna, when you hear her blame cartel misinformation, I mean, it seems to me that their policies are the ones that are aiding and abetting these cartels. That they should be looking in the mirror when it comes to that.
Absolutely. I mean, it's obviously absurd on its face. And I mean, all of the reason that we know that the border crisis is so bad is because of the Border Patrol data, right? I mean, it's coming from Joe Biden's own administration, the Department of Homeland Security. So it's a bold-faced lie. I mean, I know Matt continues to put out these really important research pieces every month talking about how every single month it seems like we're setting a new record for migrant encounters. I remember January was the highest January on record for illegal crossings. I mean, I know you can probably speak better to that, but I mean, it's of course absurd on its face, and it's a bold-faced lie. Like you said earlier, House Republicans passed the Secure the Border Act this past year. That would have also provided additional resources to Border Patrol. So I don't know what Karine Jean-Pierre is talking about, but maybe we'd even have different numbers if we had more resources for our Border Patrol agents. Who knows? Yeah, so Matt, when, like Anna was talking about, your team puts out these research pieces every month when we have the border numbers come out. Kind of two pieces I was hoping you could touch on. The first is this idea that it ebbs and flows. Yeah. And then the second is looking at the information that has been published about how cartels are taking advantage of Biden's border crisis when it comes to the policies that they put in place. Yeah. Well, the first point, facts are stubborn things, right? If Karine Jean-Pierre wants to talk about how the ebbs and flows of the border, I mean, she's just flat out wrong. Since the past 35 months, there has been a steady inflow of over 150,000 illegal border encounters. To give reference, there was never a month under the previous administration that totaled above 150,000. So the ebbs and flows, I mean, to me, it does not exist. The stats bear that out. To flow underneath 150,000 would still be a crisis. And that's been brought about by folks in the Obama administration who have said the same thing. So there is no ebbs and flows. This has been a crisis since Biden came into office. And it's going to be a crisis until Biden addresses the policies that he put in place. Now, talking about the cartels, I mean, obviously, because of Biden's open border policies, the cartels are able to abuse the southern border. They are able to abuse the fact that we haven't built a wall on our southern border. We don't have enough Border Patrol agents to patrol the border. And all of those things go hand in hand. And part of that is just we haven't been able to get the Biden administration to give enough money to address this crisis at the border. It seems like if they want to stop the smuggling, the best thing to do, like you just said, is to build the border wall, actually take steps to stop this border crisis. Anna and Matt, thank you so much for breaking all these stats down. For all that information and more, you can go to factcheckbiden.com, GOP.com. Every month, we're putting out new information that really is debunking Biden's lies on the border, which is more important, especially as they try to rewrite history. This has been the Republican Rundown. We'll be back next week.